I have been quiet for a long time. I told myself that silence was dignity, that keeping family matters inside the family was the right thing to do, that protecting everyone else's reputation was somehow my responsibility even when no one protected me. My name is Nadia. I am 44 years old. And my doctors have told me that I am running out of time. So I decided that if I am leaving this world, I am not leaving it quietly. I am not going to disappear and let the people who hurt me continue their lives without a single consequence, without a single person knowing what they actually did. My husband left me when he found out I had cancer. My mother-in-law threw me out of the house while I was in the middle of chemotherapy. I had no money, no home, and no energy left to even be angry properly. And a man I barely knew from college showed up. He did not make a speech about it. He did not ask for anything. He just came. And then he kept coming back. This is my story. Every part of it. I am not softening anything for anyone anymore. Let me take you back. Not to the hospital, not to the day everything fell apart. Let me take you back to when I was 23 years old and I thought I had figured life out. I met Farhan in my final year of the university. He was confident in that quiet way that feels safe when you are young. Not loud, not showy, just steady. Or at least that is what I believed. He came from a good family, everyone said. My parents approved immediately. His mother approved immediately. And I, 23 years old and completely in love, thought that approval meant something. We got married 8 months later. And for the first few years, life was ordinary in the way that feels beautiful when you are living inside it. Small apartment. I was teaching at a school nearby. Farhan was building his career. I genuinely believed we were building something real together. Then our daughter was born, Zara. And I want you to understand something about that time. Becoming a mother changes you in ways nobody warns you about. Suddenly, every sacrifice you make, everything you swallow quietly, you do it for this one small person who needs you completely. I told myself that was love. Maybe it was. Maybe it was also the beginning of me disappearing slowly without noticing. Farhan changed after Zara was born. Not dramatically, not in ways I could point at and name clearly. He became more distant, more irritated by small things. He started spending more time outside the house and less time inside it. I told myself he was under pressure, career pressure, financial pressure. I made excuses for him the way women are trained to make excuses for the men they love. I cooked better. I spoke softer. I asked for less. And every time I shrank myself a little more, I told myself this was what marriage required. His mother lived with us since the second year of our marriage. And I want to be very honest here because this part is important. I tried with her. I genuinely tried. I woke up before everyone else. I cooked her specific meals. I never spoke back. I swallowed insults that would have made any self-respecting person walk out the door. But in her eyes, I was never quite enough. And Farhan never once stood between us. Not once in all those years. I found the lump on an ordinary morning. Zara was at school. Farhan had already left for work. I was getting dressed and I just felt something that should not have been there. I stood completely still for maybe 2 minutes. Then I finished getting dressed, made breakfast, washed the dishes, and sat down at the kitchen table alone. I did not tell anyone for 4 days, not because I was not scared. I was terrified, but I had spent so many years being strong for everyone around me that even in that moment, alone and frightened, my first instinct was to protect everyone else from the weight of it. When I finally told Farhan we were sitting at dinner, Zara was doing homework at the other end of the table. I said it quietly. I said I found something and the doctor thinks we need to do more tests. He put his fork down. He looked at me. And then he said, "How serious do you think it is? Not are you okay? Not I am here. Not we will figure this out together. Just how serious do you think it is?" Like he was already doing the math. Like somewhere in his mind, a calculation had already begun that I was not supposed to see yet. The diagnosis came 3 weeks later. Breast cancer. Aggressive. The oncologist used words like immediate treatment and we need to move quickly. I sat in that office and I nodded and I asked the right questions and I wrote things down in a small notebook I had brought with me. And then I drove home alone because Farhan had said he was too busy to come to that particular appointment. Too busy. He was too busy to come to the appointment where his wife found out she had cancer. That evening, I came home and made dinner. I am not exaggerating. I came home from the hospital with that news sitting in my chest, and I made dinner because I did not want Zara's routine disrupted. That was the kind of woman I was. That was the kind of woman he left. Farhan came home late that night. I waited until Zara was asleep. I made tea because my hands needed something to do. I sat across from him at the kitchen table where we had eaten 1,000 meals together, and I told him everything the doctor had said. The stage, the treatment plan, the timeline. I laid it all out carefully because I thought if I was calm and organized about it, he would be calm too. He listened. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Nadia, I have to be honest with you. I cannot do this." I asked him what he meant, even though I think some part of me already knew. He said, "I am not built for this kind of thing. Watching someone go through treatment, the hospitals, the changes. I cannot be the person you need me to be right now." I sat there holding my tea and I thought, 21 years. We have been together for 21 years. Zara is 16 years old. I have cancer cells moving through my body right now, and this man is sitting across from me telling me he is not built for it. I asked him if he was saying he wanted to leave. He said he thought it would be better for both of us if we were honest about the situation now rather than later. Better for both of us. He actually said that. Like leaving his sick wife was a gift he was giving me. I did not scream. I did not throw the tea. I just sat there while something inside me went completely quiet. Like a door closing in an empty house. I had spent 21 years loving this man, forgiving this man, shrinking myself for this man. And in the moment I needed him most, he sat across from me and talked about what was better for him. He moved out within 2 weeks. He took his clothes, his laptop, his car. He left the medical bills on the kitchen counter in a neat little pile, like he had organized them for me. Like that was his final contribution to our marriage. A sorted stack of bills I had no idea how to pay. But I still had the house. I still had Zara. I told myself I could hold on. I was starting chemotherapy in 10 days. I was exhausted and terrified and falling apart on the inside, but I told myself, you have a roof. You have your daughter. You can do this. Then his mother came to my room. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just come back from a pre-treatment appointment. I could barely keep my eyes open from exhaustion. She knocked and came in and stood in the middle of the room and looked at me the way you look at something you have already decided to throw away. She said, "This house belongs to my son, and my son is gone. So you need to make arrangements." I looked at her. This woman I had served for 15 years. This woman I had cooked for, cared for, sat with during her own illnesses, defended quietly in front of my own family when they said things about her. I looked at her standing in my bedroom doorway and I said, "I start chemotherapy in 10 days. I have nowhere to go." She said, "That is not my problem." And then she left the room. I sat on the edge of that bed for a long time. I did not cry. I think I had gone somewhere beyond crying by that point. I just sat there and thought about what I was going to do. I had almost no money because Farhan had quietly moved most of it before he left. I had a 16-year-old daughter who was already watching her whole world come apart. I had cancer that needed immediate treatment. And I had 10 days to find somewhere to live. I called 2 friends. One did not answer. One answered and said she was so sorry and that she would call me back. She never did. Then my phone rang. A number I had not seen in years, a name I barely recognized at first. His name was Kashif. We had been colleagues in the same department for 2 years during college, not close friends, not even people who talked much after graduation, just someone I had shared a few lunches with, argued about assignments with, exchanged notes with before exams, a face from a chapter of my life I thought was completely behind me. He had somehow heard through a mutual contact. He did not send a long message. He did not ask 100 questions. He just called and said, "I heard what is happening. Tell me what you need." I did not know what to say. Nobody had asked me that in so long. Not "What are you going to do?" Not "How did things get this bad?" Just "Tell me what you need." 5 words. And I sat there on that bed in a house that was no longer mine, and I completely broke down. He came the next morning. And every morning after that, I want to be careful about how I talk about Kashif, because I know what people think when a woman in a difficult situation mentions a man who helped her. I know the assumptions. And I am not going to worry about those assumptions anymore. But I do want to be honest, because honesty is the only reason I am sitting here. When Kashif came that first morning, he did not come with grand gestures. He came with groceries, simple things, rice, lentils, bread, juice. Things that fill a kitchen and make a home feel less empty. He put them on the counter, asked me if Zara had eaten breakfast, and then sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Okay, tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the diagnosis, about Farhan leaving, about his mother and the 10 days, about the bills on the counter, about the two friends who never called back. I talked for almost an hour, and he sat there and listened without once interrupting, without once making a face that made me feel like a burden. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You are not going anywhere. We will figure this out." We. He said we. And I cannot explain to you what that word felt like after weeks of feeling completely alone. One small word. We. Like someone had reached into a dark room and turned the light on. He found us a small apartment within 4 days. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen. He paid the deposit himself and told me I could sort it out later when I was on my feet. I told him I did not know when that would be. He said it did not matter. Chemotherapy started 6 days later. I will not describe it in detail because some things you cannot put into words properly. I will just say that it takes something from you that you do not fully understand until it is gone. Your energy, your appetite, your sense of yourself. There were mornings I could not lift my head from the pillow. There were nights I was sick every hour. There were moments I sat on the bathroom floor and genuinely wondered if fighting was worth it. Kashif drove me to every single treatment. Not sometimes, every single one. He would arrive early, sit in the waiting room for hours, and be there when I came out. He never made me feel pitiful. He never looked at me with that mixture of pity and discomfort that people get around sick people. He just looked at me normally, like I was still just Nadia. Like the cancer was something happening to me, but not something that had replaced me entirely. One evening, after a particularly brutal treatment, I started crying in the car, and I could not stop. Not quiet crying, the kind that shakes your whole body. The kind you have been holding back for so long that when it finally comes out, it feels like something breaking open. I kept apologizing, and he kept saying, "Stop apologizing, just let it out." And I sat there outside the hospital and fell completely apart while this man I had shared maybe 30 conversations with in college sat beside me and did not move and did not make me feel ashamed of a single tear. Zara watched all of this. My daughter watched this man show up day after day while her own father sent occasional messages asking about legal paperwork. She was 16 years old and she was doing her homework at the kitchen table and making me toast when I could not stand long enough to make it myself, and trying so hard to hold herself together for me that I could see it costing her something. Children should not have to be strong for their parents. But sometimes life does not give them a choice. There was one night I remember more than almost any other. It was maybe 2 months into treatment. I had a fever that would not break, and Kashif had stayed late, sitting on the chair beside my bed. At some point, I woke up and the apartment was dark and quiet, and Kashif had fallen asleep in the chair still holding his book. And I lay there in the dark, looking at this person who had absolutely no obligation to be there, who had his own life, his own work, his own everything, who had chosen, completely freely, to be in that chair. I thought about Farhan, about the night I told him about the diagnosis, and he talked about what he was built for. And then I looked at Kashif asleep in a chair in a small apartment because he did not want me to be alone with a fever. You spend your whole life thinking you know what love looks like. You think it looks like weddings and anniversaries and grand promises. You do not expect it to look like groceries on a counter. Like a man sitting in a hospital waiting room for 4 hours without complaining. Like someone falling asleep in a chair because leaving felt wrong. I did not fall in love with Kashif the way you fall in love when you are young and everything is easy. It was slower than that, quieter. It crept in through all the ordinary moments. Through the drives home from the hospital. Through the evenings, he sat with Zara helping her with university applications while I rested in the next room. Through the morning, he noticed I had not eaten and quietly put a plate of fruit beside me and went back to reading. I told him one evening that I was scared, not about the cancer specifically, just scared in this wide-open, endless way that had no single name. He looked at me for a moment and then said, "I know, I am scared too." And something about him admitting that made me feel less alone than I had felt in years. Farhan remarried 8 months after our divorce. 8 months. Our marriage was 21 years. Our daughter was still sleeping in a small apartment listening to her mother vomit from chemotherapy at 2 in the morning, and her father was planning a wedding. Zara found out through a classmate. She called me from school, voice completely flat, the way she sounds when she is trying not to fall apart in public. She said, "Mom, Dad is getting married." I said, "Okay, baby." She said, "He wants me to come to the wedding." I said, "That is your decision." She said, "I do not want to go." I said, "Then do not go." She did not go. Farhan called me 2 days later. First row conversation since he left. He said, "Nadia, I think it would be healthy for Zara to be at the wedding. I think it would help her accept the situation." Accept the situation. His daughter was watching her mother lose her hair from chemotherapy, and he wanted her to come celebrate his new beginning and call it healing. I told him very calmly that Zara was old enough to make her own choices. He said I was poisoning her against him. I said, "Farhan, your daughter watched you leave while I had a chemo port under my skin. I did not poison her. You did that entirely by yourself." He hung up. His mother called me once during all those months of treatment. Once. I thought maybe something had shifted. Maybe some part of her felt something. She called to ask if I still had a gold necklace that had belonged to her side of the family. That was the call. Not "How are you feeling?" Not "I am sorry for what happened." She wanted jewelry back. I found the necklace. I sent it back the next day because I did not want a single thing in my home that connected me to people who had looked at my suffering and felt nothing. People have asked me if I hate Farhan. The honest answer is no. Hate requires a kind of energy I stopped having. What I feel when I think about him now is something closer to grief. I grieve the man I thought he was. I grieve the marriage I thought we had. I grieve the version of our life where he stayed, where he held my hand in that oncologist office, where he drove me home from treatments, where he sat with our daughter when she was falling apart. I grieve that man, even though I do not think he ever fully existed. But Zara, what he did to Zara, I cannot be that calm about, because she did not choose any of this. She was a child who loved her father completely, and her father looked at an inconvenient life and walked away from it. And children do not heal from that the way adults pretend they do. They carry it into every relationship they will ever have. They carry it into the way they trust people, the way they love people, the way they wait for people to leave. Kashif noticed before I did. One evening, Zara was unusually quiet at dinner, and afterward, Kashif sat with her and I heard them talking in low voices from the other room. At some point, I heard Zara say, "What if I am like him?" And I heard Kashif say, "You are not like him. You stayed. Staying is everything." I sat in the hallway and put my hand over my mouth and cried as silently as I have ever cried in my life, because my daughter was afraid she had inherited her father's ability to abandon people. And a man who had known us for less than a year was the one telling her she was worth more than that. Kashif asked me to marry him in the hospital parking lot after a scan. No ring. No plan. Just him standing there saying, "I know the timing is terrible. I know everything is hard. But I want whatever time there is left to be yours and mine together." I said yes before he finished the sentence. I am tired today. More than yesterday. The doctors told me last week that we are measuring time differently now. Not in years. Not in months, in days, in good mornings and difficult evenings. But I wanted to finish this. I wanted to say everything while I still could. Far on. If you ever see this, I want you to know something. I loved you completely. Not perfectly, but completely. With everything I had. For 21 years, I chose you every single morning without even thinking about it. The way you breathe, you do not decide to breathe, you just do. That is how I loved you. And when I got sick, when my body started fighting itself and I needed you more than I had ever needed anyone in my entire life, you sat across from me at our kitchen table and told me you were not built for it. I am not angry anymore. I want you to hear that clearly. What I feel when I think about you now is something closer to grief. I grieve the man I thought you were. I grieve the marriage I thought we had. Zara does not talk about you much anymore. Not because I turned her against you. She stopped talking about you the day she realized that love without presence is just a word. Children do not need explanations, Farhan. They just watch. And she watched everything. I hope your new life is kind to you. I mean that. Not sarcastically. I genuinely hope you found whatever it was you were looking for when you left. I also hope that in those quiet moments when the house is still and your mind slows down, I hope you think about a woman who loved you through 2 failed careers, through your mother's cruelty, through years of feeling invisible in her own marriage. A woman who found out she had cancer and still made dinner that night because she did not want to disrupt her daughter's routine. I hope you remember her. Because she deserved to be remembered. Kashif held my hand through every dark morning. He learned which side of the bed I needed to sleep on after treatments. He memorized which medicines made me nauseous. He sat with Zara at 2 in the morning when she could not sleep from worry and talked to her until she could. He loved me not despite what I was going through, but straight through the middle of it. Without flinching, without calculating, without asking when things would get easier. He loved me the way I always deserved to be loved. I just had to lose everything first to find it. Tell the people who stayed that you love them. Do not wait until you are sitting where I am sitting. Do not wait until the words feel urgent because time is actually running out. Say it now, while there is still ordinary time, while there are still regular evenings and quiet mornings and nothing dramatic happening at all. Say it now. I am grateful for Kashif, for Zara, for every morning I woke up and chose to keep going even when keeping going felt impossible. I am grateful that I got to find out what real love looks like, even if it took losing everything to see it clearly. I love you, Zara. You were never the reason my life got hard. You were the reason I fought to stay in it. And Kashif, you came when no one else did. You stayed when staying was difficult. You loved me when I had nothing left to offer but honesty and exhaustion in whatever days remained. That is everything. That is more than everything. I think that is all I wanted to say. She recorded this 4 days before she passed. She made me promise to post it. She said the truth should outlive the people who tried to bury it. My name is Zara, and my mother asked me to make sure you heard her. You heard her.